Hey, what's up you guys? So today I want to discuss Pretties by Scott Westerfeld, and this is the second book in the UGLIES series by Scott Westerfeld, and I believe this series is a trilogy, and then there's also an additional book called Extras that is kind of like a companion type book to it. So anyways, I finished this book. This book is about Tally after everything that has happened in UGLIES, and so at the end of UGLIES she turned pretty, and so this book follows her being a pretty in this society where at the age of 16 you have a operation that turns you into a pretty. This book overall I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. I think I enjoyed the first one a little bit more because I think that it was a little bit better overall. I think that the pacing was better in the first book. I also feel like the development of the side characters was better in the first book. So now let's get into some of the stuff that I liked in this book. So I really enjoyed Tally's overall development in this book. I feel like she really changed a lot and she really grew a lot and she really learned a lot throughout the course of this book, and I really enjoyed that, and I loved how Zane was there as well, and I loved his development too, and I loved how he and Tally kind of developed together and how their development kind of hinged on each other's development. So I liked how that whole thing worked together. I also really like how this book further delved into the good and bad aspects of humanity, and in this book we get to see some of the other sides of society, and so we get to see some of the other things that are kind of good and bad with humanity. We get to see things like revenge and vengeance and how that isn't very good, but we also get to see how people working together can be a good thing. I liked seeing those two aspects of humanity. As I said, I also really loved Zane's introduction overall. I think that he was really a great character to add into the story, and I liked how he really developed on his own. I think he was probably the strongest character in the series so far, and I look forward to seeing what kind of happens with him in the next book based off of this one. I also really loved how the Pretties spoke differently than the UGLIES, and they also thought very differently as well, and I really liked how the operation really changed them in so many fundamental ways, and you really got to see that in this book, and you really got to dive in deeper with that. So now let's get into some of the things that I did not like as much. Shay felt very underdeveloped in this book, and I feel like we were missing a lot of key scenes with her, and I think that that is part of the problem with this book being solely focused on Tally, is the fact that we did miss a lot of scenes from Shay, but I feel like we also missed some other scenes as well. Like I would have liked a little bit more development with Dr. Cable, and I just feel like we were missing so much development there, and you could chalk it up to the fact that Tally was a pretty and so she was not as aware of her surroundings, but it's still kind of frustrating to me, especially given everything that Shay goes through in this book, so I just feel like I'm really missing some key developmental scenes from her. I also didn't like how we were missing the new Smokies in this book. One of the biggest things that I really liked about the last book was the introduction of them, and so again with those characters I feel like we're just missing scenes from key characters and they are being underdeveloped. So that's just something that really bugged me with this book. I just feel like so many of the side characters were underdeveloped, and for that reason I think that this book was actually really hindered by the fact that it only followed Tally. I think that this book would have really been benefited by following some of the other characters for a little bit, jumping into their minds and seeing what was going on with them, but we didn't get that. So that is it for my non-spoilery thoughts on this book. So if you don't want to be spoiled, I would leave now or else I will spoil you. So just telling you how it is. So now for the spoilery part, I'm really just gonna go through some key scenes, key moments that I liked and that I wanted to discuss with you guys. So the first moment was when Zane and Tally were cured. I absolutely loved that moment, and I loved how they really had to do it together, and I liked how the cure affected them both so differently, and I like how we figure out why it affected them both so differently. And I just felt so bad for Tally, and I was also like so invested in Zane in this book. Like I absolutely loved Zane, and I think that he was such a great addition, and so seeing how he reacted to the cure and seeing how it changed him, I loved it. And I loved how, because he had been given the cure, he seemed to have been affected a lot more quickly than Tally, but Tally, who actually had not gotten the cure, how she still broke up pretty headed sometimes, and I love those little lines in there because it really glues you into what is going to happen at the end, and I didn't see the end coming as far as the cure was concerned, so I just really enjoyed that. I thought the little bit that we got with David was really disappointing, and I didn't like how that created a love triangle because the love triangle felt very forced to me. In order to have a love triangle, I have to feel like there is an actual attachment to both of the people in the love triangle, and in this book it just felt like she had fallen out of love with David, and that's completely fine. It would have been better for it to have been addressed like that rather than her thinking that she now had a choice that she had to make when she kind of established established in this book with her own internal thoughts that she wasn't really in love with him anymore and that she really cared about Zane. And I just feel like that was so frustrating to me that she was simultaneously thinking of it as a choice when she also kind of already had the choice made in her head. So that just felt kind of dumb to me, and it was just really frustrating, and I did not like it at all. And I feel like the little bit that we got with David, he was just underdeveloped as well. Like, he did not go through anything in this book. He was just there. He was just a character that existed, and like, what is the point in that? I just feel like I missed so many scenes. And especially with the fact that Croy came and got Tally rather than David, I just thought that we could have had some really great development there with David. We could have seen some real struggle with him, but we didn't. And the only real thing that we got with him was the breakup scene. But even that just didn't feel, it felt very forced. Like, it didn't feel natural. So I was just disappointed overall with all of the moments with David. They just didn't feel very natural. It didn't feel like Tally was really invested emotionally. And if she's not invested emotionally, why should I be invested emotionally? And as I said before, Croy coming instead of David, it just felt like such a missed opportunity. We could have had some development with the New Smokies. We could have seen some real struggle there. We could have seen maybe like a power struggle or something just to show a different side of humanity as well. And so I was just disappointed with that too. Shay and Tally's fight, I absolutely loved their little fight that they had. It felt so authentic to both of their characters, and I really loved how ununderstanding Shay was, but the thing was, is she was just ununderstanding because she didn't have all of the information, and when you've been portrayed like that, why would you want any more information? So where was I before my cat decided to attack her food? Shay and Tally's fight, I really loved their fight. It felt very authentic to both of their characters. I thought that this scene was just such a great moment for both of their characters to really show how they interacted with one another and show where their relationship was at. And I really loved getting to see Shay kind of break out of her pretty head mold and see Tally for what had happened. And I feel like Shay was completely validated in her feelings that she had, even though she did not have all of the information, and even though to some extent she was kind of wrong. But the thing is Tally had really betrayed Shay. You know, it's really hard to come back from that. It's kind of like if a partner cheats on you, you're not gonna go back to that partner very easily because they cheated on you. And so it's kind of like that with Shay to me, and so I just absolutely loved that. It felt like an authentic fight, and it felt like a very valid fight, even though there was just a little bit of miscommunication there as to some of the bulk of what the fight was about. I really enjoyed the thing that was going on with the cutters, and this is part of why I feel like we were missing some key developmental scenes from Shay, because it felt like we went from zero to her forming the cutters quite quickly, and a little bit of a trigger warning there for self-harm, because that was a little bit of an interesting scene that had me a little creeped out. So I liked that overall scene, and I think that it was really well done. I just think that we were missing, again, that development getting there. You know, it's not just like one day you do something like that. It is something that develops. So I just feel like we were very much missing scenes. I loved the reserve. It was so weird, but I think it was such a great experiment with humanity. I don't think it's something that is very humane, but it was a very interesting development story-wise, because I just loved how it provided another outlook for us to look at the way that people think and the way that people interact. And I really loved how it showed such an us versus them mentality and how harmful that can be. You know, it isn't us versus them. We are all people, and we should all try to work together, even though we do have differing opinions. And so I just really loved that look on that. I thought that that was just such a great addition to the story, even though it was super weird and it did feel a little out of place at times. Andrew Smith was another very underdeveloped character. I honestly forgot about him until I just looked at my list for discussing this book. So he was just very underdeveloped. I feel like he was just there to kind of spout off some themes for us, and that's really irritating as the reader. I can come to my own conclusions about the themes as I read the book. I do not need you as an author to tell me the themes, and that's just kind of what he felt like, and I did not like that or appreciate that at all. And then, as I said before, I just did not like the love triangle at all. I feel like Tally was just so over David as soon as she saw him again. Like, all she could think was, he's uglier than I thought he was. And I'm like, okay, then you don't love him anymore. And so it just doesn't feel like a choice anymore. So I don't think it's a great love triangle. I think it's kind of dumb. So anyways, that was my thoughts on Pretties by Scott Westerfeld. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, comment, all that jazz. I will see you in my next video. I post videos on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. Bye!